for the first time don't realize that there's much more to her than meets the eye, because in addition to the role you see, there are at least 3 more that remain hidden. Well, let's hope today I can present her full personality as I introduce you to Shovana Narayan. Welcome to the program, Shovana.
Thank you very much.
You know, you seem to be a lady of many parts. You're a dancer, a civil servant, the Austrian ambassador's wife, and you're also a part-time lecturer at the University of Vienna. But which of these is the real Shovana?
It depends on at what time of the day you're meeting me and in which capacity.
You're making yourself sound a bit like a chameleon.
Aren't we all, in a way?
I mean, you actually, depending upon who you're with, there's a different Shovana they get to see.
That's true. Like, I laughingly always say that 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. I'm the civil servant. And 6 p.m. to 9 a.m. it's the world of dance.
And when are you your husband's wife?
And, well, every woman is a housewife and is a wife and a mother. So I think that automatically fits in, you know, whenever, so I don't think any woman has to make a special effort to be.
So you don't compartmentalize it, all of this together is Shovana.
It is.
But to be able to do so many different things, you must be an expert at time management.
I don't know whether I can call myself an expert at time management, but yes, I'm very focused in what I do, and I love what I do. And perhaps that's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing.
And in addition to being focused, you have to discipline yourself and say that, you know, these are the hours for academics, these are the hours for dancing, this is the time for work.
True, true. Because when you're at work, you certainly can't think about dance. And when you're dancing, you certainly can't think about work, then it would be a total mishmash of things. So that reminds me, you know, that probably came up because of my upbringing. My mother was the most influential factor in my life. And she was always the one who would always say, I don't want to see you with a book, sitting over there, pretending to, you know, sort of saying that I'm studying for 12 hours a day or 14 hours a day, whereas your mind is wandering all over. She said, sit for 4 hours, study well, and then go out and play. Rather than let the mind wander. Go out and play, go out and dance, go out, relax, do something. So that whatever you do it well, put your whole heart in it, and then come back and you'll find that you're doing it well.
Let's go back and talk about your childhood, because this wasn't the only reason why it was an amazing childhood. Your grandfather was a freedom fighter, and I believe the first Indian to be arrested by the Raj in Bihar.
Yes.
Your mother, as you say, was a social worker and politician.
Yes.
So what sort of childhood was it?
A childhood where I saw a lot of people in the house, because naturally she was in social work, so our house was an open door, and there were lots of people teeming in, teeming out. Then at the same time, I grew up with, you know, instead of reading ABCD or Kakha Gagha, I think I remember reading Jack and Jill much later, but what I remember growing up with is the Bhagavad Gita, the poetries of Jai Shankar Prasad, Himadri Tunga Shringa Shre Prabuddha Shuddha Bharati Swayam Prabha Samujjala Swatantrata Puka. All these, even till today, I can recite the Gita out for you.
And this is all because Mummy taught it to you when you were young and susceptible.
Exactly. And then
You remember all of it?
I remember most of it, particularly 11th Adhyaya of the Gita. I can sing it away.
Go on, let's sing a bit of it for us.
Little bit? Okay. This is when Sanjay is asking, and the answer, this is about his entire Vishwarupa. Sthane Hirishikesh Shatava Prakritya Jagat Praharshat Tanurajatina Kasmanj Bhitani Dusho Dravanti Sarve Namasyan Jyuta Siddha Sangha Kasmat Chena. I can go on singing it.
But it's amazing, because in addition to being a dancer, you could have been a singer with ease. I mean, that's another secret popping out of this interview, isn't it?
Well, when we were little kids, my sister and I, we did give playback songs as child artists.
Really?
Yes.
For the movies?
For the movies. because at that time my father was posted in Bombay. So we were quite hot favorites of Roshan, S.D. Burman and Rahul Dev Burman.
So somewhere in the archives is the voice of little Shovana.
And Ranjana. She has a better voice than mine.
But you know, although your mother taught you the Gita, the
Yes.
subject that you really became completely entranced by was almost at the other end of the intellectual spectrum. It was physics, wasn't it?
Would you say that it was the other end of the spectrum? Because physics is so much part of life. Even when you look at the Gita, when you're looking at it, it always reminds me of, you know, what Fritz Capra wrote in the Tao of Physics. There's so much of spirituality even in every laws of physics.
Was it that attracted you to physics, the spirituality of it?
I think the mathematics and the spirituality. I love mathematics.
You went all the way to doing a PhD before the civil service intervened and stopped you finishing it. Do you regret that you never finished it?
Not entirely. No, I would not say I regret it, because if I had wanted to do it, I would have found time to do it. So somewhere, probably the will wasn't strong enough. So that's why I don't regret it.
The civil service exam was an excuse and an opportunity to give it up.
Yes, I grew up with both, you know, with dance and studies. So automatically, yes, civil service was part. My father was a civil servant. I think it was quite natural.
But the inclination towards academia didn't end, because amazingly enough, 25 years later, in fact last year, May 2001, you did an MPhil in public policy.
Yes.
And you're also a visiting lecturer at the University of Vienna.
Yes, I did. I went and I enjoyed every moment of my study leave when I was working on my papers. Then when I was doing the upper course in IIPA, where I got the MPhil degree, I enjoyed every moment. It's great fun, you know. Just knowledge is something so beautiful. Even now, every night I sit and I read and I read and I read.
But what do people from the world of dance say when they discover that in addition to being one of India's finest Kathak dancers, you are also almost a PhD in physics and a lecturer at Vienna University? Aren't they surprised?
I suppose they're surprised, but what is actually more important for them when you're in the world of dance? It's what you are as a dancer, who you are as a dancer, what you're contributing as a dancer. That is what they see. Other things don't matter.
It's interesting because, in fact, dance began, if the stories are true, almost by accident. Is it really the case that you were 3 years old and your mother encouraged you because she wanted to get you out of her hair?
She was also very interested in music and dance. In a usual caste family, there's music and dance as part of the upbringing. And my mother, she had done her MA from BHU in the early 40s. Music was one of her subjects. She was a gold medalist from there, but in Sanskrit and Hindi literature. And so she was the one who was very interested in music and dance. And I still remember that I used to love falling ill. I was a sickly child. And I loved falling ill only for one reason, because my mother would plait my hair into 2 little pigtails, and I remember little blue ribbons being tied over there, ghungroos being tied around my feet, and then she'd say, "Jahan jahan meri beti ke charan pair padenge, wahan wahan log mathe ke dhul, unke charan ke dhul mathe par lagayenge." So, and I would go into peals of laughter. And so she was very keen on dance. My cousin sister had come. She was learning dance, and I used to keep watching her and I used to keep imitating her so much so that she started practicing in the bathroom. so that I wouldn't be like the ape, you know, suddenly mimicking her, you know, and just, you know, sort of verbatim, you know, reproducing it.
But there was a moment when you were young, when you weren't quite as self-confident as this. Do you remember the first dance competition you took part in when you were just 4?
Yes, and how can I forget that? And I am grateful to that moment, because otherwise I wouldn't have been on stage.
But tell us what happened, because you froze on day 1, didn't you?
Yes, you can say that again. I was the one. I was quite a stubborn child, and wanted to enroll myself for some wretched dance competition. My parents said, no, you can't do that. You've just started learning dance, blah, blah, blah. But usually I got my way. I went and enrolled myself. Fortunately, there was a stage rehearsal one day prior to the show. And when I went over there, I saw all the other girls going up, and they all seemed huge to me because they were much older to me. and then in the lovely, lovely clothes and costumes, and I froze. But inside I was dancing. I wanted to dance. I wanted to break free, and I wanted to dance. But somewhere it was like, I think I was Ahilya to the power of infinity, just rooted over there. And then I was cajoled with chocolates and sweets and everything, and nothing happened. And finally, I came home. By that time, my grand aunt, my mother's face was going red with temper. I came home and I got the beating of my life. And what a beating, I'll never forget it. And then the last straw was that, "Acha, hum tumhara naam katwa rahe hain." I'm sort of, there's no need for you to dance anymore because you just made a spectacle of yourself. That was it. I said, no, I've got to dance, I've got to dance. And I went and danced the next day, and I don't know how I danced, but I danced and I danced and I danced.
And you won the award as well.
Yes.
The amazing thing is you carried on dancing thereafter. The gentleman that you consider your real guru is Birju Maharaj. Today, as an accomplished and recognized dancer, one of the best in India in Kathak, how much do you owe him?
How much do I
Owe him?
to him? A lot, a lot. All my gurus. Sadhana Bose, my first guru, for sort of not only sowing the seed my mother done, but actually nurturing it. In Bombay, Guru Kundan Lal, who really gave me the base, and Maharaj Ji, I'll never forget his contribution to making me into a dancer. He would come every day. I started learning from him in '64. And for about 10-12 years, he came every day to my house, taught me every single day, never charged me a single penny. I remember Sundays used to be a tough day because he used to come in the morning, and by 3 or 4 in the afternoon, I would be on my feet dancing.
So he was a hard taskmaster.
He was a hard taskmaster, and what he gave me was the spirit of dance, not only the technicalities, but also the spirit, which is the essence of a Guru-Shishya parampara.
You say he never took anything, he never took any payment, but he did take his guru dakshina in a most amusing way.
Yes. He never took even a rupee from us, but my parents would always say, "Maharaji, what can we give you?" And he was very fond of meetha, of sweets and of pan. So every evening, my mother would put a bowl full of rabdi and a plate full of pan before
And he'd
him.
go through the whole lot.
He'd go through the whole lot.
Each and every pan.
Yes.
Shobana, let's take a break. But I want to come back in part 2 and talk to you about the other two Shobnas. Shobana, the civil servant, and Shobana, the Austrian ambassador's wife. We'll be back in just a couple of moments. Stick with us. Welcome back. My guest is the incredible Shovana Narayan. Shovana, we've talked in part 1 about Shovana the academic and Shovana the dancer, but there's still Shovana the civil servant. What made you compete for the IAS?
Well, I was inclined towards academics, and so it was very natural for me to appear for the civil service.
It's such an unusual thing for someone who also wanted to be a dancer to do.
Yeah, but then I was always dancing. I was always on stage. I was always a dancer, and I was always studying.
And sometimes you were leading people to dance as well.
Yes.
Tell me, most people look upon government service as a drudgery, but from the inside and from the point of view of someone who's been committed to it, how does it seem to you?
I don't think it's a drudgery at all. I think, to me, all my 26, because I belong to the 1976 batch, so 26 years in service, I feel that I've enjoyed every posting of mine. And why to me it wasn't a drudgery, or hasn't been a drudgery and still isn't, is because that there's always a human factor involved. Okay, behind the nameless file, there is a person being affected or a group of persons being affected. So I have to be very careful in my decision. And I think that factor has always been uppermost in my mind. And many a times I would always even talk to my subordinates that let's not, why is this person coming back to me for the second time? Why, I mean, I wouldn't like to go back, for a second time if I was on the other side of the fence. Let's always put ourselves on the other side of the fence. And so with the result that civil service, there's so much that one can do in our own little way. We are little drops of water in the ocean, but if each drop of water is there, you know.
The
and
old traditional idealism still burns strongly in you.
I think so. I think so. And there's so much one can do in our own little way.
You know, you've risen to be Deputy Director General of Bharat Sanchar Nigam Limited.
That's my present assignment, yes.
It's a very demanding job. Does it ever seem as if one day the civil service could begin to dominate your life to the exclusion of dance and the other things you love?
You know, that danger should have been there, would have been there at the time when I joined service. I've already been 26 years in service. Both the careers have gone on simultaneously. You know, Karan, when I was taking up physics, people said, oh, now you're taking up physics, that's the end to your dance. When I started doing, entering service, they said, oh, now that's the end of your dance. And so every time, whenever I took up something else, they said, oh, that was the end of my dance. I think the love affair between all the three.
It's a bit like Mark Twain, reports of my death are greatly exaggerated.
Exactly. Yeah.
There is, of course, a fourth Shovana, the Austrian ambassador's wife. Where and how did you meet your husband, Herbert Traxel?
At a performance of mine.
He was watching you?
He was watching my performance.
And did he approve or was he a critic?
I suppose he was a little intrigued. Because so he says that when he heard that it was a good dancer, etc. And I met him during his first incarnation over here when he was posted here as the deputy head of mission, 75 to 80, but not in the beginning of his tenure. It was at the fag end of his tenure.
So by the time you fell in love with each other, he'd already left the country.
Exactly. So it was a long distance courtship, and then it was a long distance marriage. Till he came back.
In fact, it's amazing, isn't it? Because as a diplomat, he traveled the world. As a dancer, you were rooted in India. So
and a civil servant, I was rooted in India.
So how easy was it to, in fact, be married in those circumstances?
It was, I think, what makes it easy or difficult is your own approach and attitude. Both of us understood each other's, demands of a profession. I didn't want him to be my house husband, nor did he just want me to keep following him around. And since both of us respected each other's profession and we understood each other's views, I think that was, water finds its own level. So both of us found our own level in terms of having a commuting marriage.
You make it sound so rational and sensible, and yet the truth is that for 16.5 years, you only managed to spend 2 weeks with him every 3 months.
Yes. But then you see, okay, it wasn't the time that was important, but the fact that we were there together always.
So whenever you were together, you made a point of doing a lot to actually ensure you shared.
We were always sharing. In fact, when I took leave and went across to meet him, he never took leave. So he was in office from 7:30. He used to leave home at 7:30, come back late in the evening.
What about when he came to meet you?
I never took leave. I was in office. In fact, I remember a time when I was, at that time I was posted in Rajya Sabha Secretariat, and I was the assistant returning officer for a few days. He had just come for a week, and out of that week the presidential election took place. So you can imagine I was never at home.
And did he complain?
No, not at all.
He seems an incredibly understanding man.
Very much so. He is very understanding, and I'm grateful to him. So were my parents, who gave me all the support, my sister, my husband, and I'm also grateful to our son.
Yes, absolutely, because I was going to say that whilst for the two of you, you use the phrase a commuting marriage elsewhere for your marriage, yeah. It's okay for the two of you, but for your son, it must have been pretty difficult not to have the two parents together most of the time.
Yes, because the first 6 years of his life, he was with me. And then when he had to start class 1, I sent him to Vienna. He always had one parent at a time.
But never or rarely both together?
Except on the holidays. But, let me tell you one comment that he made once, and I thought it was so true. I said, don't you feel that your mother is neglecting you? So he says, no. He said, what if you had been here, Ma? He says, I leave home at 7:30 in the morning for school. I come back, quickly have my lunch or something. I'm rushing out again. By the time I get back, it's evening, and then I'm back to my studies and my work or whatever. And he says, so you would be spending the whole day doing nothing. He says, what's important for me is that I know you're there for me.
The amazing thing is that, in fact, the only time the two of you have lived together in the same city at the same time is when Herbert got posted to India as the Austrian ambassador.
Absolutely.
And now in a couple of months, that tenure is going to end. Do you dread it?
No, not at all.
You don't think you've been spoiled by the fact that you've had him with you for 3 unbroken years?
No, I think everything, life goes, it's like,
You can slip back to commuting all over again?
Of course.
You sure you aren't a little hard-hearted inside, or you haven't steeled yourself?
I think one has to just take life as it comes.
This is the discipline.
It's, you can't have everything and anything in life. You just have to take life as it comes.
In your life, you've given priority always to dance, whether it's in terms of the job, whether it's in terms of academics, even it seems in terms of your marriage. What does dance mean to you?
It's my breath, my life itself. I think I would be very incomplete without it. I would sort of wither away. It's my breath. And
if your first guru, the legendary Sadhna Bose, were to see you, she saw you first when you were a wee little babe in arms and your mother took you there. If she were to see you today, do you think she'd be proud of the dancer she created?
I think so. Let me just tell you, Karen, I did have an opportunity of meeting her just before her death in the early 70s. Went back to Calcutta, and she regaled me with stories about what I was and how I was as a student when I first came to her. And she said, you came, and I looked at you and said, Koler bachan yeshcho, you brought me a babe in arms,
That was your mother?
That was my mother. She told my mother. And then I did ask her, I said, how come you remember? And you've been narrating all these stories. She says, I've kept up because that kind of interest was, sort of quite rare, and I loved it, and that's why she kept track of my record, and which was easy for her also because her sister, Naina Devi, would keep giving her news of my progress. And
so she followed your progress all the years?
All the years.
Shovana, you've won many awards, you've seen several triumphs, you've had a lot of recognition. Is there still a goal, an ambition that drives you?
I think the only thing which drives any person is that one is a student. Knowledge is never complete, and one is hungering for knowledge. One is wanting. Saraswati is so far, and it always reminds me of that saying that I saw the closed door and I thought I found the key. I found it, I opened it, and I saw yet another closed door. I found the key, opened it, saw yet another. I think that is what is life all about, and that is what knowledge is all about, and we are always students.
Shovana, thank you for opening the door to your life for us. It's been a pleasure to look in and a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.